What should you do when self-improvement books and self-improvement content in general, like videos or podcasts, no longer inspire? Before I tell you that, I want you to understand this. Just because the self-improvement content no longer inspires does not mean that you've exhausted your potential. You see, this has two reasons. Number one, a lot of content these days is just extremely repetitive and also very mediocre. So if you hear the same mediocre message for the 1000th time, then of course it's not going to inspire anymore. And number two, there are limits as to what type of knowledge can be transferred by words. So no matter how many books you read on how to play the piano, unless you actually start playing the piano, it's all for nothing. And so the person who reads all the piano books, most of which will be mediocre, if he then concludes, well, learning about playing the piano no longer inspires, it would be extremely foolish. Because in learning about how to play the piano, he actually forgot to play the piano, So the difficult answer when self-improvement books and content no longer inspires is that you just need to do different. You just need to stop reading them and start living more in the real world. You need to go outside more. You need to do more things in order to keep growing, in order to keep learning. But this, of course, raises the question, how then should you fill your time? Like, let's say you've socialized with your friends, it's 8 in the evening, and you return home. And you usually go to bed by 10. What do you do in those 2 hours if you can't read? Well, if you can't read, you will almost certainly go back to scrolling. And so to prevent that, we actually need to continue reading. And so how do you discover what to read outside of self-improvement books if you have no other interests in books? Well, I have done it this way. Whenever I would read a great book, I would write down the books that it mentioned, and then I would read those. And so I would get a network of books that mention each other, and then I would also get a list from that, and then I would just buy one book after another. Or I would go to the bookstore and just pick random books that I thought were interesting. This is how I maintain reading a lot without needing to read about self-improvement. Because it is true, most self-improvement books are mediocre. And also there's limits as to what type of knowledge can be transferred. So I want you to do the same thing. Just look at the references in the books, which book they mention, which book they maybe interpret, read those. Then if you like one of those books, look at which books it mentions, and then you go like this. And eventually you will discover a great taste. Right now, I'm reading mostly ascetic texts. So that's like the saints who live in the desert, and they write about discipline, virtue, salvation, and those things. And I also read the Bible a lot, and I also read about how the world works. So I love game theory, I love history, and this is what I'm interested in right now. But this isn't what you always used to be. I used to read psychology books before I discovered that. So my way was essentially this: self-improvement books, and psychological books, and then more like philosophical books, and then more like the ascetic and religious texts, and next to that the historical texts. So this is how my kind of process worked with discovering my reading interest. And when I noticed that after a while of not consuming self-improvement content, my habits get worse again, I just reread the books that have helped me in the past. And this is how I get back on track. And so I want you to do the same. Just live more. That means actually implement the things that the book talks about. And then you'll have plenty of potential to still improve. And also, just go to the bookstore, pick the books you like, then look which books they mention, and read those, and then you'll discover your own taste. And finally, if you notice that you slip back into bad habits, just reread the self-improvement books that have helped you in the past. And so, my name is Kirill. My goal is to inspire 10,000 good decisions. If this video helped you, subscribe. If it did not, unsubscribe and leave 50 head counts. And we'll see you in the next one.